Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Cornerstone of America podcast. I am your co-host today, Alex Jowdy, and I am joined by a good friend of mine, David Boddy. I said that right?
Yes.
I butcher names, bro. I suck at names.
Everybody thinks it's Bodie. It's Boddy.
I said Bodie like 6 times to Anna Marie, who, after she met you the first time, she will know your family tree, everybody's birthday, what your sign, how to spell your name.
Yep.
So, just to kind of give everybody a heads up, David is basically going to be joining me as a co-host for the next few episodes and see if we want to make this thing a full-time thing.
Yeah. I'm excited, man.
So welcome.
Thank you.
So I just want to tell everybody first, we met in Jiu Jitsu.
Yeah.
And actually our wives met first.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because we moved over here to Montana from Washington State. And right off the bat, the women's camp was going on in Idaho. Yeah. And my wife's like, I really, really want to go to this thing. It's going to be a great way to meet people. Mm-hmm. And so literally a week after moving here, she went off to Idaho and met your wife and hit it off really well. And she's like, oh man, you gotta meet. So then it was pretty cool to come over and start getting to know you and see what you're doing as well. That's awesome.
Yeah. I hadn't realized until a couple weeks ago when we talked before, actually last week, that when they had gone on that trip, that you guys had literally just moved here.
Yes. Yeah. I went back to Washington to get the last load while she was in Idaho. So yeah.
No, that's cool.
Days in.
All right. So just let's go into your background a little bit, man. Where are you from?
Yeah. So I'm from Washington State. That's where I was born. Born in Enumclaw, Washington.
Nice. I butchered that too. And I lived there for 6 years. Not there, but in Washington.
Yeah. Well, actually, okay. Grew up in Enumclaw, born, I think, in Kirkland or something like that. So, spent most of my life in Enumclaw and then Eatonville. Mm-hmm. So, based in Mount Rainier. That's where I went to high school and grew up. I was actually homeschooled. Nice. One of 9. Nice. Big family.
So, like Anna Marie, same. Mm-hmm. She's one of 9. Yeah.
We can relate on all that big family stuff. Yeah. And, grew up out there in the country, 10 acres, lots of animals, kind of the farm life, homeschooling and playing a lot of sports.
So this is kind of home out here then.
Oh yeah.
Space and
yeah. It's funny because this actually reminds me a lot of Enumclaw. I've always loved Enumclaw.
Is it more eastern Washington, Enumclaw? Like going towards?
It is. It's east of the Seattle, Puyallup area, right? Kind of Tacoma, that main area. So you head east, but it's before you get to the mountains. So it's kind of on your way to Crystal Mountain.
Oh, gotcha.
You're skiing and stuff.
Yep.
So still green, not dry yet.
Yep.
But it reminds me a lot of that because it's open, a lot of farm fields and stuff, but you got some nice mountains nearby.
Yeah, and you get, people would be surprised, there's a lot more politically aligned with Montana and other more independent, libertarian, conservative states. Yeah. You just get this pocket of Seattle and that cluster F of Olympia that just jacking it for everybody.
Yeah, it's crazy because you get out like King County. Yeah. Enumclaw is technically King County.
I know, right?
And
it's right on the outer edge.
Yeah, but yet, you've got a much more conservative, typically much more conservative environment and stuff. And that's, we kind of moved into the city a bit more for my work, what I was doing. And then kind of slowly we're like, time to get back out in the country.
So what order were you then in the kids?
So I am, I have a twin sister. She'll tell you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. She was born 40 minutes before me. So I am the third oldest, and she will definitely remind anyone of that.
So the funny thing about that, the kids always joke around about because we have twins, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the girls are like, I'm older, And I'm sitting there going you were conceived at the same time. I'll
have to use that one next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The random thing though is we were born on opposite sides of midnight. So we actually have 2 separate birthdays.
What the hell? Okay, that's got to be an insane odds. One in a...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah. So third oldest, technically. And there's actually a 7-year gap between me and the next one. So there's this original 3, and then 6 years later...
I remember you told me about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this huge gap. Your dad was done, and they were just just kidding.
Yep. Vasectomy and everything.
Yeah.
Reversal 6 years later.
Oh, yeah.
They work.
So
not interested in that.
And then they had how many more after that?
6.
6.
Yeah. Yeah. 7 boys, 2 girls. So it's That's
so funny. So Anna Marie's family is 2 kids, Anna Marie and her older sister with her mom, and then her biological dad passed away when she was like 6 months old, and then her mom got remarried a couple years later. He had 2 kids. His ex-wife was just a crackhead drug addict, so she was out of the picture. Wow. And so they got married, so that's 4, and then they had 5 more together.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny, that's like the question we would always get when people find out I'm one of 9. They're like, is it mixed or anything? And it's like, no, same.
That's cool, man. So then, so did you play sports or anything like that in high school? Or?
Yeah, I love sports. Yeah. So early on, I started playing baseball as a kid, and then football by the time I was like 8 or 9. And then in high school, so I was homeschooled, but in Washington, it was at the time pretty easy to just go play for the high school. So yeah, I played football, was kind of my specialty. Ended up quitting everything else and focusing on football through high school. Middle linebacker, tight end, just like, So I was getting recruited and stuff for college. It just didn't end up pursuing it. Ended up starting to log.
Usually people like kind of phase out of football because they just start realizing like, all right, because I've met, like, I remember when I was younger and I was like, I had a scholarship to San Jose State, and to play O-line. They're like, you got to get bigger. I was like, all right, and I'm 6'1" on a good day, like I'm just under 6'1", right? And at the time I was not the size I am now, and I was like, 180 pounds. I played soccer and track my whole life, and then I got into football like my sophomore year of high school, and then my 4'10" Japanese Samoan coach, 400 pounds.
Oh man,
I'm exaggerating a little bit. Just a barrel dude, right? Yeah, Jowdy, you gotta gain weight. Between junior and senior. This is '96, so they would just shovel like pasta and cookies down my throat, telling me just to gain weight. Yeah, so
jar of peanuts,
right? But like and then so I got a scholarship to play at San Jose State. Then I jacked my knee up, and then I remember getting into training, some other stuff, and I thought about getting back into football a couple years later, and I started meeting like professional athletes. I was like, we're different humans. Like we're not even the same, man. I was like, I'm done. I'll go to coaching.
I was 6'3" already as a freshman. Man. Yeah. But I weighed like 165.
Right. Yeah.
And so they told me as a freshman, they're like, hey man, if you can put on 30 plus pounds between freshman sophomore year, right? They're like, yeah, you can play varsity.
Yeah.
So I did. Carrying like hard-boiled eggs and bricks of cheese around with me everywhere I went. I was so sick of eating, classic hard gainer story. Like, I'm just so done with eating. Oh, dude. But I did. I came in my sophomore year, I was like 195. Yeah. And then like 230s-ish, 220s in, junior and senior year. And so I got there.
Yeah. So funny. So my whole point with that was like, most people, like when they stop playing, it's just like, you realize like how much of a toll, but you into logging. That's like probably one of the few professions that's going to beat you up as much as football is.
Right. Well, that was the funny thing is, so I kind of went through these phases in high school of kind of ups and downs. I was interested in like farming and ranching, and actually I always wanted to have a ranch in Montana. Funny.
Very cool. Now you're here.
Yeah, now I'm here. Not ranching. And then I was thinking about going to Bible school out of high school. Grew up in a very religious family, and so I was like, I'll go to Bible school, and ended up not doing either. Kind of found myself in this weird space, and then I had some buddies that were their dads owned logging companies, very common in Eatonville.
Yep.
And so I went out and started logging, and it was interesting because I was in great shape from football, but the reality is like standing on the side of a mountain pulling cables and stuff, very different.
That's a different animal.
So I thought I was really awesome, and then got out there and I lost so much weight.
Yeah, dude.
I was so strong, like tensile work strength, but So I did that for like a year. Ended up logging for a while. It was fun. Had my lifted truck and making money, and
nice.
and I just kind of moved on from the football thing, and struggle with that a couple times. Like early on, the first couple of years, it's like, oh man, I should have played football.
Yeah.
But it's great with my son because I hope one day to kind of at least dabble a little bit in coaching because I love football. It's awesome.
Yeah. But because you got Hayden's how 14?
Yep. Hayden's 14, and then Savannah 10, and At least 6.
And he just finished his freshman year.
Yep, just finished his freshman year.
You got to play on varsity too, right?
We got to suit up with him. Yeah. Cool. It's funny. He reminds me a lot of me. Yeah. He's 6'1 and a half, 6'2", something like that.
Yeah, he's a tall kid.
But he weighs like 160. You know,
normal, man.
Yeah, he's got to put on that weight. So getting him excited about that. But.
The nice thing is like we know more now about like weight gain and that kind of stuff too. And it's like kids that age, it's like if they, especially boys, you know, going through puberty and like the natural testosterone, it's like if they look at weights, they put on weight, you know. So it's like they don't have to eat as much as you think they do. Like especially back in when we were like trying to put on weight for high school. So dude, that's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. I know, if only we knew what we knew now then.
Oh yeah. I get in arguments with my son, you know, about it. You know, when he gets, you know, it's. When you're, and this is kind of like one of those, and I want to get into this later, but this is one of those things where, like, when you're young, you don't know what you don't know, and you know, and also you don't know what you don't have, right? Like, it's hard to appreciate something when you've had it your whole life. Well, like my son, all my kids have grown up with access to like the best gyms, right? You know, we've been personal trainers, and then like I opened my first gym when Elias was 3 years old, 2.5, so he grew up in a gym, you know, all of them did, and then we opened this large gym in Washington, and then we moved here, but before, I mean, even after we left the gym, then we built out like a decked out garage gym, which is you know, the outside of the studio here, right? So you know, and then now we're running the fitness program from SBG, so they've always had access to like a killer gym, and mom and dad both like strength coaches, personal trainer, you know, that kind of thing. And it's like fucking getting him to like pulling teeth to get him to lift, and he'll do like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and we only have him doing it twice a week, right? And then he'll see like the progress with it and stuff. And even now, like he trains inconsistently, and he just turned 13. And I've talked to a bunch of kids over at SBG, like the dads that are, because he just moved into the teens program, right? And they're like, yeah, dude, a lot of the kids talk about like how strong their kid is. I'm like, yeah, dude, but he's I'm like, dude. So like, I just wanted him like, dude, you don't understand. You don't
realize what you have.
Right. You know, he got into it hard when a buddy of ours who's actually out in Washington, he's a firefighter, and he comes here all the time, and he's a purple belt. And over the summer when Frankel was here doing his seminars, and then we had SBG had this like summer cookout over on the lake, and you went to that. I
went to that.
It was right after you guys moved here, right?
That was right after. A month.
So, and you know how kids are sometimes, like it takes a village. Like know your kids aren't going to listen to you all the time, right? So I said, hey, you know Stevie, he's a firefighter. He goes, he is? He goes, yeah. I'm like, yeah, he's strong. I was like, I know, he gives me fits, and I'm like, I'm bigger than him, you know, and so he started talking to him about like he's like, dude, you need to lift weights. You have access to it. He's like, I didn't start until I was 18. My mom was a gym owner, and he's like, I wish I would have started when I was like your age. And and then he like hit it hard for like 2 months, and then just like, so I got to get other people to talk to him. You know, that's kind of what it is.
That's a great point though. In the, you know, it's raised by a village. That's such a good point. Because like the better men you're surrounding yourself with, then like your son is able to bleed just little things from each guy. It's so awesome.
Well, I think that kind of gets to why we both moved here. You know, I mean, we didn't know each other, we're both from Washington, but like there's a reason why we decided, like with our wives, like we're bringing our families out here. Yeah. You know, because of community and
absolutely
opportunity and everything else too, right? All right. So football, logging, and then so you said you did logging for about a year.
It's like a year and a half or so. And I mean, typical logger stories, like almost died a few times and decided, you know, I had a tree come down the hill. I think the final moment was so cable snap all the time. It's so funny. Like you watch Axemen, and I used to do that, like working under yarders. And they're like, what will happen next? And I'm kind of like, and I'm like, this happened every day. Like, you're being so dramatic, you know, and I just kind of laugh about it.
Because for the average person, it's just like, oh, I'm going to work today. You might die.
Right. No big deal. Yeah. So I kind of was like, man, I like this tree thing, but it's got to be a little bit safer way to do it. So got into power line clearance, tree trimming. So
cool.
See Aspel in those big orange trucks trimming trees around power lines. Did that.
There's some like really like unique, like very essential jobs to like society that people don't think about a lot that pay like really well. It's like these little niche things, like, you know.
Who thinks of that?
Great benefits, like really good pay, like the whole, and not like good pay like $20 an hour, like good pay, like you're making really good money.
It's funny because I was doing the logging thing. It was actually my mom. She was like, have you ever seen those orange trucks? Like, I wonder if you could go work for them. And I was like, man, I've never even thought about that. So, and it was a union gig. So it was good money, and storm work was fun in the winter.
Nice.
Lots of windstorms and stuff like that. So you're out cutting trees off of power lines. And so it was, it was pretty cool. Did that for 10, 11 years.
So where did the military come in?
So the military, that's an interesting part of my story. Yeah. So as a kid, I grew up, so my grandfather was a Marine. Some other relatives on my dad's side were Marines. And so initially, like as a pretty young kid, I was like, man, I want to be a Marine.
Yeah.
You know, and props to all my Marine brothers out there, like just bulldogs. Yeah. And then kind of developed over the years. I was like, suddenly kind of got fixated on this Green Beret thing. I was like, man, I want to be a Green Beret. And so I can remember being about 8, 9 years old, wearing camo, running around the yard, you know, pretending I was in the military. And that just kind of grew into high school. I had a buddy of mine, my best friend in high school. He ended up going to the Naval Academy, but he and I were both tracking like, hey, we're going to go, you know, he was going to be a SEAL and I was going to be a Green Beret. And so we're doing all these crazy, like, special ops workouts together and stuff like that. And basically wanted to go delayed entry. And for whatever reason, this is, you know, I graduated in 2005. So we're talking about the heat of things really picking up in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Gotcha.
And so my dad was like, no, I'm not going to sign for you. You need to wait till you're 18.
Oh.
And I was like,
how old are you now?
I'm 34.
You're 34. Yeah. You're a little bit younger than me. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know. It's weird. It kind of took me out. And yeah, maybe we'll talk about that more some other time, because it was like there's a thing I see now where it was like something in that rejection piece, like I just kind of let go and was like, instead of like waiting till I was 18 and just joining.
Yeah.
It was weird. It kind of took me out and ended up getting married young. So I just kind of set it aside, and it ate at me, honestly. It ate at me for years. And so finally when I was, I enlisted when I was 30 years old.
Oh, no way.
Into the Army National Guard.
Interesting.
Yeah, I turned 31 in basic training.
That's crazy.
Which was awesome because it moved me up to the older bracket for PT tests. So my score like automatically went up.
You're like, I kicked ass. Geriatric to me.
Yeah. So it just kind of ate at me. And finally I was like, kind of in a weird point where in my life where I was like, man, what am I doing? And that was something that's always been in me, on my heart to do. And so I was like, all right, here we go. I'm going to do it. So yeah, went infantry and joined the National Guard. And
very cool, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did, so this is 5 years ago? No, 6?
4.
4. Okay. My math sucks. so 4 years ago. Okay. So what'd your wife and the kids think when you made this decision?
You know, that was like the biggest thing. I thought about it for months and was like, oh man, my wife's going to kill me if I bring this up. Honestly, I was like, there's no way. But the crazy thing was when I talked to her about it, she was just like, yeah, that makes sense. Do it. Because a lot of it was weird. It was just on my life. Like I used to have people come up to me all the time. Are you in the military? No. And it always make me feel even worse about I'm not in the military.
I get that all the time. And cause I'm like 6'1", 270, like tattooed.
Yeah. Are you a vet?
And especially now I have this podcast. I was like, are you a veteran? I was like, no, like never. Especially with, I would never even remotely even, you know, because I see some stupid shit, but you know, I get you.
Yeah. Yeah. So she was actually right on board, was like, absolutely do what you feel like God's telling you to do, which was really a big piece of it. Was like, I feel like God wants me to do this. It's been in me for this long. That's why. And so just jumped in. I mean, the hardest part was basic. Yeah. That's for infantry. It's basic and AIT, your advanced training is all in the same place. It's OSIT, they call it. Anyway, so I was at Fort Benning for 5.5 months. And so as a grown man with kids, it was really weird to realize like, oh man, like I'm separating for 5 months. It's a totally different battle than what like an 18-year-old's dealing with when they go to basic. And so,
because you don't have like kids at home.
Yeah.
At least most 18-year-olds don't have kids at home.
Right. And most of them, it's the opposite. They're afraid to be stepping out into something new away from the family. Yeah. And I'm just feeling bad because like my family hasn't heard from me for 4 weeks.
Right.
Because they're not sending letters yet or whatever. I'm not getting mail. And, And so ultimately basic was tough for them, but they were excited. My son was just like, this is awesome. You know, he thinks it's great. And my girls love it. They love that, you know, Dad's in the Army. And so, yeah. So it was not as hard as I thought it would be to transition into that.
Was, I'm guessing just from, you know, being a father and husband that basic, like when you were kind of going through the process of signing up and picking what you wanted to do, that the National Guard probably helped from a standpoint of like after basic, you're not, unless there's a deployment.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Because people think like if you join the National Guard, you just go once a month and like that's it. Like you don't actually have deployments. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, a lot of people, I think, and even people I've met in units and guys in basic that were guard. It's really a unique group I went through basic with too. Is I think 80% guard.
Oh, interesting.
Which is super strange, and the drill sergeants are like, "What is wrong with this?" But they're just like, "Oh, I'm not going to deploy." And there's guys, and there's guys, and there's guys finding out in basic, "Oh crap, the unit I'm going to is deploying to Afghanistan like a month or two after I get back," and some of those guys, because they were so new, they did end up having to deploy.
Yeah,
but. And honestly, for me, I was like excited for the deployment piece, but so weekends and stuff makes it a lot easier for sure. At least the initial break-in period of like, okay, yes, I'm going to be doing these things. And actually my unit in Washington was spooling up for a deployment. And so, we stepped into like, hey, your AT that's supposed to be 2 weeks during the summer is actually 3 weeks. And we're going to be doing some other things that are more days. Gotcha. And so, but that's still way, way easier than, hey, we don't know where we're going to live until you get out of basic and they tell you what unit you're going to and you're getting stationed there. That's a totally different story.
Nice. Yeah. All right. So got a couple different questions here. And I know some already just because I know you now a little bit. So what precipitated the initial move out here to Montana?
Great question.
Besides just the... I manage 6 social media accounts. I have 2 podcasts. I guest on a lot now. And half the time Anna Marie, like my wife, is always like, just don't fucking talk about COVID. And not from like she's anti-talking about it, because me and her will go off on riffs. But,
sure.
But sometimes like it'll just derail the conversation, right? And just like we just go into these downhill. But I know that was part of it, obviously. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of things. First of all, it's kind of funny because so when my wife and I were dating, and so we got married at 19. I was 19, she was 18. Damn. And I went off for a semester of Bible school instead of college football or the military. That's right. I did do a semester of Bible school, and during that time we wrote a lot of letters, and we used to sit there and talk about how we're going to like move to Montana and live so she was a skier from a young age, so her thing was, I want to live in the Rocky Mountains.
Right. Yeah.
Get some of that real pow. And then for me, it was like, I want to live in the wild. And we talked about having matching lifted trucks and all this kind of stuff. So that was always something that was there. But then certainly one of the things that was growing to be frustrating in Washington, COVID really, I think, brought it out to the surface, was just not feeling like it was the greatest place to raise my family. Right. And wrestling with that and just longing for a community of like-minded brothers and obviously kids and everything, families for us to grow up with. Yeah. And so, plus prices were just skyrocketing in Washington, still are just crazy high. And so it's just like, man, like it doesn't feel worthwhile long-term with the vision I have to drop so much money to stay here where ultimately... I'm not even sure if I want to stay here. Yeah. And so COVID was actually a blessing in disguise for me, because I was working for a city over there doing arborist work, and I was actually in a supervisory role. So a lot of my work was online. So it was actually a blessing in that I started working remotely most of the time. And suddenly I had this ability like, wait, what's holding me back now? Right. Like I really could technically live almost anywhere. It'd just be the practicalities coming back to do inspections. And so, really opened up this opportunity. And so my wife and I started talking about it. And it started with like Eastern Washington and Idaho. And then it's like, wait, what about Montana?
It's right there.
It's right there. You know, if we're going to go that far. And
we did the same thing. We looked at Eastern Washington, like look at Yakima and Goldendale. And we're like, oh, it's cool out here. And it's like, oh, it's kind of hot. And then like, well, we're still in Washington, so we still got to deal with the politics of Washington. Yeah.
Right. Because, you know, King County, Snohomish, you know, some of these big counties are really what's ruling the state. Yeah. There's so many voters there. And so, it was kind of like, Eastern Washington, nah. But then we had heard a lot about Kalispell area from podcasts, from very, you know, like everything. Just heard a lot. And we'd passed through Montana a lot in the past, but not spent like a considerable amount of time. Yeah. And so it was like, hey, let's just go check it out. So we came in the middle of the winter. It was cold. It was snowy. Nice. And just fell in love. Yeah. But I think what's amazing is you have you have a really cool community here. You have everything you can really need, but you still have that open. You got the mountains, you got Glacier Park. I mean, it's just like all these awesome things, but you still have the convenience. It's not like I'm having to drive 3 hours, to get to a grocery store. So,
because of like where like it being in Western Montana, and plus like kind of where we chose to move to, which is like the Flathead Valley, and it's growing, but it's still like, I'll get people ask, from our coastal friends or family, like, why'd you go to Montana? I'm like, there's 1 million people in the whole state. Like, the state? I go, Like, Seattle's got like 4 million in the greater Seattle area. California's got like 20 some odd million just in LA that they know of, So
it's so crazy because we would visit and we'd drive over the mountains and drop back into, smaller cities by Western Washington standards. And it's like, this feels so crowded. This feels so crowded. It was crazy. You don't really realize it until you kind of see something different. But ultimately I had to kind of take a leap of faith a bit and just like, all right, we're going to pursue this. And work was like, we can't really tell you not to. It's like,
as long as
peace out. No, it's good. We're out. So,
and then, okay, so I got you guys here. And then, so where does Jiu Jitsu come in?
Oh, man.
I always wrap this back in. Everybody can see I got my Jiu Jitsu flag.
I love that flag.
Chris Papandrea, he's a black belt, owns a couple studios actually in Illinois. He makes these. So I saw a post. Travis knows him, and I saw. It's the great thing about social media, man. Like you just run into stuff all the time. Like I saw a post about a flag he made, and then I texted him like, "Hey, this is awesome," And I said like, I've been looking for one for my studio, but I don't want it to be just a typical American flag. He's like, "Oh, I make different ones," and he sent me his account on, I think it was Etsy or something like that. Then I look up and I was like, "Dude, do you still make the Jiu-Jitsu ones?" He goes, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yes,
need it."
I know.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I know. Like a part of me wants to like mark it like where I am, which is like the shitty little white belt, but I don't want to mess it up. So I think I might get like a little like just like a sticky, like exactly. My picture, like I am here.
I am here. You are here.
Yes. I want to be there, but so that's cool, man. So okay, so where's you just?
So I think growing up, actually, it's kind of funny in football. I had a buddy who did judo and jiu-jitsu, and I watched like how he was able to toss people and like fall really well.
Never get hurt.
Yeah, never get hurt. And he was so chill too about everything. I was like, man, that's really cool. And so over the years, I think I kind of thought about it, wanted to. It wasn't something my family did. Growing up, we didn't do any kind of martial arts or anything. And so it was just like football, baseball, kind of classic sports. And so what's interesting is as I got older, started like Jocko podcast, Tim Kennedy, some of these guys, listening to them.
And, so you start hearing about it more.
I started hearing about it. I was like, I really need to do this, but had trouble finding that in Washington, especially.
Where you were,
and then like right when we were really about to pull the trigger, COVID happened. And so then everybody was shut down. And so we started hearing about SBG through Andy on his podcast, and then a couple other different ways. And we were like, there's one here, and there was a bunch here in the valley. And so we literally came in one of our visits, checked out the gym and met with them and figured out everything. We're like, man, this is amazing. Just the family kind of atmosphere there and everything. We're like, wow, this is really awesome. And then literally we moved in on a Friday, and that next Saturday we were in officially signing up and picking up geese.
Nice.
And like started that week. And of course my wife went off to the camp the next weekend.
And, like everything in class yet. Like,
literally that was her first classes.
Oh, dude, no way. That's hilarious.
I think we may have done one foundations class with John before then, but like that was it for her. I'd done a little bit of jiu-jitsu in the Army. They did not do much combatives in my round of basic, which was a bummer. But so then it was like, man, we really want our whole family to do this. I think there was just this idea of the discipline and not to mention just the defense. Like my little girls, like I want my girls to be confident that, if you think about it, I love how Jocko always explains it, like, more than not, like you're going to end up on the ground, or like if your little girl's going to get somebody's going to try to grab her. So to be comfortable with that and being able to grapple is huge. And it's been awesome because the whole family just loves it. And like even my littlest one, who's a little bit more of a princess, she will literally like this switch flips. And she's just like, and I'll come home and she'll be like, Dad, I choked somebody out today. I'm like, yes. And she's just so proud of herself. So it's been a huge thing. And honestly, I feel like SBG has been it's been a huge part in us feeling welcome here too. Like, we started looking for churches and stuff, but the one thing we first did was SBG, and it was a great way to start meeting people in the community. And really the atmosphere of the gym is just so welcoming and I feel like family friendly, and, I'm not worried about somebody trying to like smash us. I mean, obviously, as we get higher in the ranks, I'm sure I'll experience a bit more. Yeah, that'll be good. But
it's always like, hey, you got to chill out a little bit. Like, you're kind of spazzy. I'm like, dude, I'm trying not to die, bro.
Yeah. I'm gonna have some opportunities soon to.
No, it's great.
Spazzy
it's an awesome experience, because it's funny because like you're telling the story about your whole journey here and kind of what you're doing and like what you're looking for with family and whatnot, and it's like literally like almost to a T for the most part, like the same things like boxes like Anna Marie and I were doing. It was like, knew about Montana, had talked about it for a long time. There was, we had a couple of gyms in California. It's like, all right, then we hit Washington because it was still coastal and, and it was like California light. And then 5 years later, they just trashed it. And so we were like, all right. And we had started talking about Montana, and we knew about Kalispell because one of her friends that she grew up with in California had been living here for a while. Her husband was in the Marines, and he's a cop out here, and she's a real estate agent. So we talked about like coming out to visit at one point, and she knew Flathead Valley. She didn't know exactly where. And then when COVID, the third time that Washington talked about shutting down again, I remember I was in the gym working out in our garage gym, and she was up in her office because she's, she was working with clients and stuff online. And I texted her. I was like, hey, what do you think about Kalispell? And she's like, where's that? And I sent her like a ping, and she goes, oh, that's where Jordan lives, like her friend. And I said, no shit. She goes, yeah. I said, they got a Jiu Jitsu gym there, because I was not too long after I heard Travis and Keith on Andy's podcast. And so I always give Andy shit like, yeah, I brought 7 people here because of you. Yeah. Because, everybody gives him crap about like he's the sole responsibility of why, like the amount of people that moved here in the last year. Right? Yeah. So
he's at least partially responsible.
A little bit for sure. So I've known about SBG, the organization, for a long time. I just didn't know there was one here. Yeah. Let alone, 5 in the state. Yeah. And then having to hear Travis and Keith's, story on the podcast and kind of listen, get to know them a little bit, through the podcast and multiple podcasts and whatnot. I was like, oh, this is really cool. So we came out to visit, and we actually freaking put a down payment on the whole year for the family before we even had a house, when we left.
Priorities.
And Leah's like, so when are you moving? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a house yet. But we're like, here's the money. We're coming. And what that was is like, and we can get into this a little bit too. It was one of those things where people talk about like I want to do this someday. Like I want to do that someday. Like, someday is like this, like I call it like unicorn land. Like it's not a real day, right? Like it doesn't exist, right? It's like, are you talking about tomorrow? Like what's the date? Yeah, next week, next month, next year. Like when? Like when are you doing this? Like when are you going to start? And then more importantly, like, when are you going to start working towards like that goal? Right. So for us, Anna Marie and I, we after we went through the whole tour and we came out and it was our second visit out here, we just looked at each other like do you want to put a deposit down? I mean, that means we're coming. We're coming. Like we're in the office and Leah's in there. Like, all right, here you go. Boom. And that was like our flag going like we planted our flag going, okay, cool. Awesome. Like we are going to come. We just committed this amount of money. Like we're going to be here. So, and they were awesome about like not starting our membership until like we actually moved out here. And it was only a couple months after. So cool.
I think that's so important because so many times we sit here and we say, yeah, someday it's so great to do this. Or, maybe when I retire, I'll have a house in Montana. And you can just sit there and, someday. What is someday? I don't know what someday is, but no, we're going to do it. And really to challenge yourself, to push yourself out of your comfort zone. 100%. You have to do stuff like that. It's that leap of faith. It's that step of like, well, here we go. I don't even understand where this is going. And that has literally been the story of our life since we moved over here, is just door after door opening and just like, okay, here we go. But that couldn't have happened if you don't first take that step of like, we're just going to do this.
Well, and then also like moving by yourself or like as a couple without any kids versus, moving a family across states. I think it's really important. I think what made our move easy, a lot of people like I've met here that have moved here in the last couple of years, met through SBG. All of us had that same thing, which was like moving here and not because especially working from home, like the vast majority of us can do or have done,
right,
or continue to do, it's easy to isolate yourself, right?
Yep.
So when you move and you move your family, like, and the kids, and then for us too, we homeschool. It was really important that SBG or something like that, where it was like, we move here and we're diving into this community that already exists. So we're not just like, okay, we moved, but now what? Now we're just like, we're living in this like awesome house that's bigger and better with property and everything than what we had in Washington. But we're still kind of staying home because we don't know anybody. Right. Yeah. So SBG is like, boom, cool. Here, there's like 50 kids in a class, and and here's a bunch of people, and there's like a bunch of different classes you could take, and you can meet all these different. So it was really what like kind of helped propel us like community wise to grow and kind of put ourselves out there a little bit more too.
Absolutely. That's a huge part, is like that networking piece. And I think there's a big difference between isolation and like solitude.
Yep.
Solitude's good. But it is a terrible place to be isolated.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what we felt in Washington, was even in our church, that we loved our church, but just, I don't know. I think maybe because of the fact that we were kind of on our way out and didn't really realize it at first, there was just this kind of separation going on, and being isolated is a terrible place to be. And so then, what is the best way to network with people? Well, man, SBG has been amazing, because there's so, like, every one of my kids now has friends. I mean, within a couple months of moving, my kids are having birthday parties, and they're having multiple friends over because of that. It's like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I love
especially everything being shut down for so long too. Like,
for
that, that year, and the kids are like, oh, there's all these kids running around, they're playing together. None of the parents are freaking out, saying like, stay away from each other. Like, that by itself alone was like well worth anything. I would have paid double to move here just for that.
Oh yeah. And the funny thing is, you don't really realize how much you miss that until you get there and you're seeing it.
Right.
You get over here and you're just like, wow, I forgot how hard it was for my kids to be stuck at home, not seeing their friends. For months and months. Like, my son was hurting. He needed that. And so to jump, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, that's what John, like our jiu-jitsu coach, like he was saying the same thing, because he came from LA. He owned a jiu-jitsu studio, and he owned an SBG down there. And he said like it really started hitting. His boys were getting really really kind of depressed, and it was hitting them hard. They're like, we gotta get out of here.
Yeah. Pretty amazing coming here. And
it's cool.
Everything's
all
open.
These people. So that gets me to, well, I was going to ask you, like, what do you, how are you enjoying jiu-jitsu as like doing something new in your like as an adult, like something physically new, because jiu-jitsu is different, right?
Yeah.
It's not, I joke around because my friends are like, dude, you're like a CrossFitter. That running joke, like, how do you know somebody does CrossFit? They always shut up about it.
That's all they talk about.
And no, but it's one of those things where there's not a lot of things you could pick up as an adult, and that involves you learning how to move your body in a completely different way, like in space. Than, especially if you weren't just like this couch-ridden schlub like your whole life, right? Like, if you're athletic, if you play sports, weight training, like all that stuff too, and you do all kinds of things, you compete in different things, like you're used to like your body moving different planes of motion, and then you get into jiu-jitsu and it's just like, what? Like, my hips can go that way? Like, I didn't know that. I didn't know I put my foot here, and then you actually have to move in these directions, right? Yeah, and then it's humbling.
Oh man,
it's humbling.
It is so humbling. It's so crazy because like I'm a pretty big guy. Lift weights, run, all this stuff. Like, I'm in pretty good shape. And then you step into jiu-jitsu, and especially as an older guy, like you just step in there and suddenly, 130-pound guy is just tying me up in knots. and it really is. There's something in that drives you. Like, no. Like, I need to learn this, because if they can do that, imagine what I could do.
Right.
And so it's been good. It's been a really good learning experience. I think like you were talking about the movements of my body, like when I first started, there's certain things we're doing, and I'm like, dude, my hips don't move that way.
I don't bend that way, bro.
I don't bend like that. And it just hit me the other day. I was in class I was sitting this certain way and then did this movement. I was like, oh man,
I can do that.
I can do it now.
Yep.
It just didn't even think about it. But so there's so much that goes into it. And I think the discipline too of like learning and just being humble and being a good partner too, has been great for me. Yeah. And, I think the biggest thing too is I feel like this is a really good way as a guy in my 30s, as I'm approaching 40s and 50s. I think this is going to be a great way to get longevity and prevent injuries. It just, there's so many things you learn in jiu-jitsu. And that's what I love about John. Like he's always talking about that kind of stuff. Like you're learning how to fall. Yeah. So that you can slip on the ice here in Montana and not die. You know, and it's like, oh yeah, that's really important.
Well, it is. You know? Especially if you start looking at, like, you look at long-term, like healthcare, like especially with this country. Yeah. You know, and Anna Marie, she, like, for a couple years, she worked in like elder care. And, and that got me, and especially like when I was in training, and I had a lot of clients in Silicon Valley I trained that were in their like 60s and 70s, retired, some are retired, and like you start, you know, I was actually doing some research and looking up information and stuff, and it's this thing where like you get in your 60s, you fall, you break a hip, and then there's a stat. It's like if you fall and break your hip and you're over 65, you're dead within like 7 years. It's something crazy. Ridiculous. Yeah. Like, it's like fast. It's like super fast, just downhill. Right. Yep. And, and it's just, and that kind of is what really kind of drove me with the concept of like, well, you have this adage of people go like, well, I'm older now. So like they just start accepting stuff. Yeah. I don't think it has anything to do with really being older. I think what it is like, the older you are, the more years you've spent doing whatever you've done to be where you are at that point, right? Yep. So like if you're 18, you don't really have a lot of years of destroying your body. Right. Right. Okay. Well, at 48, you do. Yeah. Right. You do. Yeah. And you can still be in good shape, but like you've just done more. There's more. You know what I mean? It's like a car. Yeah. Okay. Same thing, dude. You can go, like, especially here in Montana. Like I've seen cars that are like less than 10 years old. It got some freaking rust on it. They're beat to shit because they're not taken care of. Right. Especially because they salt the roads here right now. Yeah. That's funny about moving here. What you don't notice is like, sorry, shiny object. Is it? There's a car wash on every corner. Yeah. And they all have undercarriage washes because of like, you know during the winter, all the salt, make sure you wash the bar of the car off so they don't rust out. Yeah. But you've got new cars that look like shit, and then you've got cars that are 40, 50 years old, and they're well taken, as long as they're taken care of, they're running, they're in good shape, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. Your body's the same way. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's been kind of a journey I've been on, especially joining the military late as well. Yeah. You know, just realizing like, this is the time to set those habits and start building those things. So by the time I'm 50, 60, 70, I'm reaping the benefits of that. And I feel like jiu-jitsu is a huge piece of that. I mean, look at the guys that are, you know, multiple level black belts, way in. These guys, you can do this. This is a lifelong thing. Yeah. You know, and that's, I think, one of the awesome things for my kids too, is like, I feel like I'm giving them a gift that they can have the rest of their life. Because football, but if you're able to play football past high school, it's awesome. Yeah. That's rare. And unique. Yeah. And if you make it past college, even more amazing and rare. And, and if by 32, you're considered old. Yeah. And if you're 30, you're an old man. And you're going to be lucky if you can walk when you're 50, you know? And so that's just amazing that you can do something that is violent, that is fun and aggressive, and yet you're building longevity, you're building flexibility, camaraderie. I mean, honestly, like if you're not doing jiu-jitsu, like go do jiu-jitsu. I mean, it's just, there's so many benefits to doing it. And as a family to do it together. Yeah. Cause we're all our family, like both of us, like our whole families do it. Like wives, kids, everything too. Yeah. Everything. Yeah. And as a family, it's a bonding thing. We all enjoy it. Yeah. And then we can mess around. Of course, it's made wrestling with my man-child son a lot more interesting now, but it's fun. You know, we can all do it together and enjoy that. Sure. And I think that's a really cool thing too. So yeah, well, it's definitely a great like community to be part of. You know what I mean? It's fun. Like I enjoy because I take the kids the majority of the time in the evenings. Just because of the way my wife and I schedule work. You know, and then so like yesterday, for example, I was there in the evening and Diana was there. With Hayden and the girls, and we're chatting, and I look over, and Clypey, one of my twins, is like, "Dad, watch!" And I look over, and she's showing me how she's choking out her sister, and we're just laughing. You know? It's funny how the wrestling evolves now. Like suddenly, I'm seeing this child is in closed guard, protecting themselves, and I'm like, they're not just like throwing each other around. I'm like, all right, this is good, but like, let's take it easy, no arm bars. You know, set a couple boundaries and just let them go. Yeah. Phoebe, our youngest, is just going ham on the kids right now. Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, because she started when we moved here. So we moved here Halloween Day last year. She'll be 4 January 27th. Wow. So she was like a little over 2.5 when she started. Because we asked Travis and like, hey, how old can? Because I'm like, okay, can she start when she's 4? maybe 3, because some places it's like 5 or 6.
Right.
And he's like, as long as they're potty trained. I'm like, she's potty trained. I'm like, you're telling me I can sign her up now? He's like, yeah, I got like a micro monkeys class that he runs twice a week. And I was like, all right, dude.
Yeah.
And so she's been doing it for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she's not even 4 yet.
Wow.
So, and when Franco was here, like we got to hang out with him a lot, and it was so funny. Like, and when I had him and Travis on the podcast, he goes, Phoebe's going to be a savage.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was like the blessing from the Pope,
You will be a savage.
Yeah. It was pretty funny. Yeah. So,
you think about that. Like how many of us, we're picking it up in our adult life.
For sure.
Just to get to black belt, we're talking probably 40s, 50s. I don't know.
Oh, easy.
By the time
I'll be 42 next week. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking, it's a much different journey for us. Whereas, man, can you imagine being 18, 19, kind of like Travis kids, like you're barely 20 and you're a black belt, maybe even in multiple arts. Like, wow. Yeah. That would be amazing.
It's pretty cool. It's, and again, I don't expect my kids or like any kid to really understand kind of the appreciation of it at this age. Yeah. They will like 10, 15 years from now. Like when they've got friends, they're like, oh, so I should start jiu-jitsu. And they're like 15 years in, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or anything like training or something of an endeavor that you can't hack your way through. Like it takes time, So that's one of the things I really enjoy about it too. And then of course, like I have 4 daughters, and I worked in nightclubs for 20 years. Ooh. So I've seen like the shitty stuff that like, I don't care what anybody says like that, there's between men and women. That women get into situations and that, I don't want my daughters ever to be in those situations. Absolutely. And if they ever were, that they can handle themselves.
Yes.
And so having somebody on top of you not freak out, and I'm not saying that jiu-jitsu is a cure-all of like, if you're a 110-pound woman, you can, destroy like a 300-pound man. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But if you do something like jiu-jitsu and you do some weight training, number one, you will have more situational awareness. Number two, you will be aware of how not to end up under somebody. Right. Number three, you will carry yourself in a way of like confidence of I can handle myself. Yes. Yeah. Anna Marie calls it unfuckwithable.
That's a great way to put it.
She's walking down the street, like no dude's gonna look at her going like, I'm gonna attack her. She looks like a victim, right? Like nobody looks at your wife and goes like, she looks like a victim. No. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah.
It's not about like them being like solid women. It's about like it's a lot, because there's women I know that are like 110 pounds soaking away, and you look at them and go like that person can handle herself. Like that, like if I was like a predator, like that's not like a victim I would pick.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I think it's so crucial because they say that typically if you are a victim, you've been victimized ever in your life, you tend to then carry that victim thing unless like properly dealt with and worked through. Often they end up becoming victims again and again because they have this victim there's this air about it. And so to teach your girls even at a young age to walk with like confidence and strength, let's face it, like most people that are going to try to do that, they're cowards.
They are.
And so they're looking for the easy target.
I talk about like crime for the most part. Like if you take any crime, right? Whether it's a violent crime, whether it's like a blue collar crime, crime in general as a whole is a crime of opportunity. Yep. Right. That's why you have these guys that are just like damaged, and then they'll break into a home and rape like an 80-year-old grandmother. You know what I mean? Because there's no fight. Yeah. Right. And it's a control thing, and it's like God knows what else it is. Right. Yeah. But it's opportunity. Yep. Break-ins. Okay. It's easier to break into a car at a gym than it is, say, in front of somebody's house. Right. Right. Okay. Because if you're casing it and somebody left the car, they're probably not going to be back. Maybe like. Even if they rush, they're back in 20 minutes, right? Right. Yeah. So and then and if there's a bag sitting on the car, well, I'm not even going to like try to break in. I'm just going to do a smash and grab, right? So like crimes are opportunity, right? Leaving the door locked, like like locking the door, right? Like, do I think the door lock's going to stop somebody who really wants to break in? No. But it's a what's it called? It's a deterrent. Yeah, exactly. Like cameras, things like that. Yeah. So it's a deterrent. So. Being confident, carrying yourself with confidence, right? Understanding how to take care of yourself, understanding how to, be aware where like, I'm not even going to put myself in a situation. Like I'm not going to, if I go out, I'm going to park here because there's parking, but I'm not thinking that when I leave the establishment I'm leaving, that it's going to be dark. There's not really a lot of lights. That's an alley, so like these things you don't think about sometimes where this kind of stuff is actually really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, and that's that situationally aware piece where I think that, again, I love the way they teach at SPG too, because there's this premise of like, hey, here's what this would look like in the real world if you were to end up in these situations. And it just gets that mind, even at a young age, you start thinking about, okay, where am I going to park? Why am I going to park? What can I do to put myself in the best possible position? And so, it's opportunity. That door locked, that can be just enough to keep them from. Yeah, it matters, man. It makes a big difference. Doing something. Yeah.
All right. So we're a little short on time. I want to wrap up because speaking of which, I got to take the kids to Jiu Jitsu.
Yep.
I want to get to what you're doing now, which is Operation Restore Warrior, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me about that. How you got involved in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Operation Restored Warrior is just an amazing program. I got into that. Was started 13 years ago, primarily as a program to work with veterans who are struggling with suicide, loss of purpose, stuff like that. And it was only open to current military or veterans.
So this is before you were in the military? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so they started back 13 years ago, and one of my good friends, who was actually a trainer at a gym of mine in Seattle, just kind of randomly met him. He ended up joining the military late like me, and went to Afghanistan, had some stuff happen, ended up getting out early medically. And then he ended up going to this program. And I remember at the time he's telling me, this is amazing. And I was like, man, I'd love to check that out. Yeah. And he's like, sorry, man, you're not military. Bummer, dude. And I was just like, so I kind of just
super private club.
Yeah. You're not cool enough. So I just kind of literally put it aside and didn't think about it. And I'm somebody that's really into John Eldridge, Wild at Heart, that book, and just all their ministries and stuff. And so I'd been reading a lot of that. And just not really understanding the practical outworking of the stuff that's in those books for the most part.
Yep.
And anyways, I ended up joining the military, was really kind of on the rocks in my marriage, and was talking to my friend Jordan, and he's like, hey, man, you're in the military now. Technically, you can go. And I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah. So I went and completely changed my life. Completely changed my life. Just so it's basically a biblically based program where we take veterans that are, now we've opened up a bit more. We're able to get some people that are outside of the veteran community, a lot of law enforcement and first responders.
That's cool.
And, but I think what's powerful about it is it's you have a few days where you're actually focusing on your own heart and the damage that's there and like the identity that's been beaten down. And, so I went through and just totally changed my life. And then I want to say about 8 months later, they're like, hey, send out an email to all the alumni, like, hey, who's interested in becoming a facilitator? And I was like, man, this is like exactly like when I went there, I walked out, I was like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. This is amazing. And I've been involved in men's ministries and, on many different focuses in men's ministries. And so like, that was something I was thinking about. I enjoyed being a part of.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, and just applied and ended up making through. And so now I've been on the team for just about 2 years, and just a privilege to be a part of, because just to watch guys who, there's a lot of amazing men out there who have sacrificed so much for this country, and they don't even know where to start. They don't even know, they don't know what they don't know. Right. And so they're struggling with depression. They're struggling with all these things. And so we get a variety of guys, the guys who literally had a gun in their mouth days ago, to just guys who are just struggling with purpose and stuff. And without fail, they come out 5 days later in a totally different place. And it's I can't take credit. We can't take credit. It's God, 100%. Jesus shows up, he heals them, and it's amazing. And so, so I'm a part of that. And I really love being a part of that. It's a real privilege for me. Because I'm not a veteran. Yeah. I'm in the military, and I dealt with that going to my drop zone. Like, oh man, I'm taking time away from a guy who went through actual shit in Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever. Like these guys that really went through stuff. But there's a reason I was brought into that. Yeah. And it's amazing, just a privilege to work there. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to, in the next few episodes, I want to kind of get into a little bit more, and I won't go too hard in detail, but you just told me today you're going to be taking on a bigger role with the company and with the organization. So
yeah, it's going to be awesome. Yeah, I'm excited.
I am too, man. I'm happy for you, especially kind of hearing all the, your background and journey, like moving over here and then the jobs in Seattle and kind of where you're out here. Yeah,
there's a lot in there. Yeah,
it's interesting to me because it's like, it's we have a lot of similarities as far as our path. You know what I mean? Like, I forget you moved here a few months after we did.
Yeah.
But so it was, when did you guys get here?
June.
Okay. Yeah. So you barely, you haven't even been here 6 months yet.
Yeah. 5 months tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Tomorrow.
So we were here Halloween, and same thing. I took I had a gig I was doing here while, I've talked about it numerous times, and then just being here, allowed me to start really building up like the other things I wanted to do on working on my own. And that's all I do now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that same time frame. It was about like the 7-month time frame. Yeah. Well, like from the time we moved here. Yeah. About 7-8 months. It's the time I told my job, I was like, all right, peace out. I'm doing this full time now.
Yeah.
One of the guys I worked with, who was my boss, was like, can you take me with you? I'm like, dude, you can do whatever you want, man. Like, so we'll get into that too. Like the whole concept of like that mindset of, choosing what you want to do versus, putting yourself in this box of like, this is what I have to do because I've done it for so long. Right. Like that sunken cost fallacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think that's a huge thing. Just like everybody is starting to come to grips with the fact, like, the way things have been going is like, who are you relying on?
Yeah.
How sovereign, as Ryan Mickler would say, how sovereign are you to where you are kind of able to run on this path where you're not relying on everybody else? And so are you doing what you want to do? Are you self-sufficient? Are you sovereign?
Yeah.
Or are you moving at the whim of all the craziness that's going on around you right now? And so that's been a big part of my story since we've been here, is stepping into all kinds of new stuff.
Cool, man. Yeah. So next episode, I want to get into more about your role with Operation Restore Warrior. And then also, you brought up Ryan Mickler, what's called your role with them too, because you're in the Iron Council. Yeah. And you've
shout out to Battle Team Romulus.
There you go. That was super blessed to have Ryan on early on in my podcast. I actually had him on my he was my guest on my 40th birthday.
Oh wow!
I bailed on work early, ran home, and they're like, "Oh, you can't take off early." I was like, "I'm interviewing Ryan Mickler. You can kiss my ass." So a lot going on there. Yeah, and he actually was a big influence as far as. And we're talking about people and this was 2 years ago too, and he's bigger now than he was then. But but still had a pretty big following at that point. He had already moved out to Maine, and had the Maine event stuff. And I messaged him on Instagram, just asking him a question, and we messaged back and forth. He basically helped me. So everything I went over with you as far as like podcast setup, I got from him over Instagram Messenger. Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, and then he gave me a bunch of tips after when we first after my interview with him too. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. He's very down to earth.
Yeah. So it was cool. And I think that's really cool. Like when you start finding success in your life and looking at giving back without looking at like, what am I getting out of it?
Right.
Yeah. And you realize like how much that ends up, paying off.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's awesome.
Sweet, man. This was fun, dude.
Yeah.
I was awesome. This. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be a blast, man. I was telling you earlier, I was trying to, we got out here and had a few guests on and was going, went down kind of the fitness route a little bit, having gym owners. And then I did a series with Anna Marie, which ended up, spinning off into its own. Back here.
Everybody loved that.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. And then, I've had, Franco and Travis on a couple times. And I was like, I really enjoy these in-person conversations. And I'm not super geeked out as far as over the, we'll still do it, but I was like, do my own. And Anna Marie brought up like, well, just start doing your own episodes, and that kind of thing too with the podcast. And I was like, I don't like talking to myself.
It's a little weird when you're talking to yourself, right?
Yeah. It's just like, so I thought about it. I was like, you know what, maybe I should. And then I was enjoying, like, because I did 9 episodes almost in a row on my podcast, like in this series with Anna Marie. I'm like, dude, this is a lot of fun. Yeah. Like, you know what, I'm gonna go look for a co-host. So I started doing that in the last like 3-4 months, so man, I think this will be fun. It'll be great.
I think so. Yeah. I agree.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go get our kids jiu-jitsu.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, man.